Entitled Employee Who Gifts Trash at Christmas, Part 2, XL. So, here is Part 2 of my entitled employee story. We left off with discovering Sally's retaliation of giving me trash as a Christmas gift after her latest write-up. So, the next several weeks, I am noticing more problems, but here's some of the highlights. Ever since we had issues of the office's checks going randomly missing, Sally had apparently decided to just stop throwing any envelope away when opening the mail. She would supposedly search the envelopes, paperwork, and then keep the envelopes with the paperwork. So, instead of doing her job better, she would decide to just stop doing the job at all. After all, you can't get in trouble for screwing it up if you aren't doing it, right? However, this resulted in items getting left with the paperwork, which sometimes wouldn't get touched for several weeks due to being busy, that had needed to be collected or addressed right away. Sally's careless mistakes continued at about the same rate, average of 2 to 3 a week. She would put deposit slips, emails with the wrong office's report, put one office's mail in another office's bin, put one office's funding papers in another office's bin, put one office's bills in the folder for their correspondence and vice versa, put one office's bills in the folder for another office's bills, put the new month's bills in the folder without taking out the old month's bills so they would get mixed up. I could go on and on. Sally would still ask for help on things she shouldn't need help on anymore, cause I had helped her many times, on items exactly like it in the 2 years she's worked here. I mean, the whole point of asking for help when learning new things on a job is so you can take the input you're given and use it to get better at the job so you don't have to ask for help anymore. I mean, what kind of office works by their employees constantly needing to be walked through everything every day? Sally would even ask for help on things no one would need to ask for help on. For example, she asked me, an office took a deposit to the bank without showing it on their report. How do I write that up in the letter to fax to them? Exactly what you just said to me. Or another time, she asks how long she should wait before calling an office back. Well, how long do you think you should give them? Just use your good judgment. You don't need help with that. Again, you've been here 2 years. On January the 26th, I take the deck bills, correspondence faxes, and timesheets out of their folders to scan them into the computer. Now, one thing the bills should always have on them are the check number used to pay for this purchase, and the date it was paid. The offices themselves are supposed to write this on there, but they don't always, which is why it is our job to write it on there if it's missing. I had noticed, when I scanned Knopf's bills around November the 30th, that a lot of Sally's offices don't have that info written on them. So, I explained to her what needed to be written on every bill, receipt. I now flipped through the deck and Jan bills of her offices really quick to check them. There are quite a few of them with no info written down on them. There's strike one for non-compliance. Another task we would do several days, a week, that's Sally's responsibility, is to check the bank accounts online. She is to look at the bank balances and report any low balances to Greg, or me if Greg isn't there. She is then to look at the transactions in order to see if anything looks fraudulent. Since we are a loan company, check fraud is very common for us. So, we look at the checks for anything funny looking, and we look to see if there are any auto debits, like when you use your bank account online to pay for a bill, that would tell us if someone got hold of our bank account info. On January the 30th, at 1:15 p.m., I asked if any of the bank balances were low. Greg was out of town for a few days. Sally said she had forgotten to check the bank accounts that morning. Weird, cause you had to check the Dallas office to make sure the money we sent them had shown up. How did you get the Logan sheet out to look in their bank account, but then forget about checking all the bank accounts? This just further cemented in my mind that she was not checking these bank accounts the way she should. I was 100% positive that all she does when logging into these bank accounts is checking the balances to give to Greg but then never checks the transactions. I know this, cause 1. I've observed Sally only logging in to write down the balances, and then logging back out. She had some flimsy excuse ready when I asked her about it. 2. There have been auto debits that appeared in bank accounts that we didn't find for weeks until I happened to see it for some reason, and guess what? She never pointed those out to us. And 3. Sally hadn't bothered to check the bank account balances since Greg was out of town, so clearly she only felt the need to check the balances. There's strike 2 for non-compliance. And even more bad mistakes or decisions. At the end of Jan, we discovered that Sally had mailed the employees' W-2s to the manager's home addresses instead of to the offices to distribute to their employees. We had an office that moved locations to right across the street, so the only thing that changed in their address was their street number, 12 Main Street, instead of 11 Main Street. I explained this to Sally and gave her an updated list of the office's addresses. 3 weeks later, we get a call from that office saying that mail we send to them keeps going to their landlord's house. I checked the address labels Sally had created for herself. Sure enough, it had the wrong address on them. I go to grab the lease, and at the top is where the tenant's new address is listed, and all the way at the bottom of the page in the paragraph titled Rent, where it lists where to send the rent, is the landlord's home address. And that's the address Sally had chosen to be the new office's address on her address labels. Sally hadn't been faxing the offices to ask for bills, receipts that never made it to us. I used the last towel on a roll of paper towels, so I went to the cabinets to grab another. We were out. Sally is in charge of keeping track of supplies that need ordering, so I go to Sally and say we're completely out of paper towels. We need to order some. Sally responds, no one ever tells me when they grab the last roll, so I know when to order them. Excuse me, since when is it our job to tell you to do your job? It's your responsibility to keep track of supplies. You should be checking the level of paper towels, toilet paper, Kleenex, etc., to see when you need to order them. So, I knew she needed a second warning, write-up for carelessness cause of the numerous mistakes, since the first warning write-up in the middle of deck, and I would be giving Sally a first warning, write-up for negligence cause of her not asking the offices for missing bills, and not writing the info on the bills I had told her to do at the end of November. However, it was only a few days from February, which was the time for performance reviews. So, rather than doing a write-up now, and then in a week or so doing a performance review, that was one of the worst performance reviews I've ever heard of, I decided to just do it in one fell swoop. You know, just get it all out of the way with one bad conversation, one bad day, and then both of us can hopefully put it behind us and move on. I decided to do the performance review and write-ups on February the 5th, Monday. It went much smoother, cause Greg was there, so Sally couldn't really give me lip or lash out by showing attitude and anger like she had previously. On February the 7th, Wednesday, I log in to get the transactions for an office who is switching banks. I wanted to get an updated list of outstanding checks, so they know how many checks are left before they can close the old bank account. And what do I see? Someone had used the bank account to pay $100 on their AT&T bill. I call the office and find out it was actually them, so no fraud there. But I then asked Sally if she had seen that when checking the bank accounts. She said she didn't remember. Obviously, I have found my proof that she is either not checking them or isn't paying attention when she does. I have a discussion with Greg about it, and we decide I need to have a sit down with her about her not doing her job. She is sick on Thursday, so I plan to talk with her the next day she comes in. On February the 9th, Friday, I begin the conversation about checking the bank accounts and how important it is. I am planning to say things like, we expect you to do this job, you've been told multiple times to do this task, if you're not going to do the job, then you're welcome to go find another one, etc. But she cuts me off at the beginning with an excuse of, well, I didn't know what I should be looking for, now I know, and it broke me. She does this exact thing every time I have to have a conversation with her. She has an excuse ready to go on the tip of her tongue, always spins it around so it's not actually her fault. It's always, well, I didn't know that, but now I do, and I was just done. I didn't continue the conversation, even though I needed to, cause I just broke down in tears from the stress of having to discipline her, and knowing that nothing will ever come of it, but having our hands legally tied to be able to fire her right now. I cried nonstop for over 4 hours. On February the 12th, Monday, I sat down to continue the conversation, this time with a written statement for her to sign. You respond a lot of the time that you don't know how to do things, which is very frustrating, cause you've been shown multiple times how to do these tasks. It's very inefficient and wasteful that I have to constantly check all of your work and retrain you on the same thing over and over again. This needs to change. This job is about accuracy and accountability. Sally, you're not giving me a chance to improve. I never hear, good job, from you. All I ever hear is, you're doing a bad job. Sign this paper. I get in trouble every time I ask for help, so I guess I'll just follow the instructions and hope I'm doing it right. The problems with that response. You've worked here for 2 years, Sally. You've had plenty of time to improve. The reason you never hear, good job, is cause you're not doing a good job. How am I supposed to tell you, good job, but also need to give you a write-up for doing a bad job? If you're getting multiple write-ups for doing a bad job, don't you think that's a sign that something is wrong? I mean, she thinks that managers should be telling their employees good job on everything they do, right? No, you're expected to do these tasks. We're not going to congratulate you every time you do your basic job requirements like some toddler that needs constant positive reinforcement, so they know that doing something right is a good thing. You will hear, good job, when you are doing a really good job on something, when you go above and beyond. I mean, do you think Greg tells me, good job, when I'm just doing my job as expected? No. I've never had a manager constantly tell me, good job, all the time. Wow. Sorry about that. Kinda went on a crazy rant there. I'm good now. Here's another example of her mentality of, if I don't do the job, I can't get in trouble for doing it wrong. She's going to stop asking for help instead of using the help I've given her to do better. I mean, if you're making these mistakes when you're asking for help, how many more are you going to make when you stop asking for help? How does this make any logical sense? Well, here's another chance for some malicious compliance. She claimed she didn't know how to check the bank accounts, right? Well, my job as the manager is to make sure my employees know how to do their job. So, I need to sit down with her and train her how to check the bank accounts. Again, even though I know she already knows how to do it. So, every time you tell me that the reason why you didn't do a job is, cause you didn't know how to do it right, well, we're going to sit down and waste both are times and annoy you having to be retrained on something you do, in fact, know how to do. Sally continues making careless mistakes and not doing stuff she doesn't think she should have to do, like answering the phones. It's her job to answer the phones. That's something I as the manager should be delegating to her. However, she never answers the phone unless I literally can't. So, I had asked her to start answering the phone more. She will wait until the last possible second before answering the phone. By that time, it's already rung twice, so I have to answer it before it goes on any longer or they hang up. One time, we were both away from our desks when the phone rang. We both went to answer it, but she was closer and got to her desk before me, put her hand on the phone, and watched me until I got to my desk before she picked it up, with a comment of, "Oh, laughs, I didn't want to make you walk all the way to your desk." Well, you did, anyway, you little jerk. On February the 27th, Sally asks for help on a report. She says that my note stating the office is over-deposited, $28 on report 1 but fixed on report 2 by being $28 under-deposited didn't work out. She says that they were never over by $28 in the first place. I take the report to look it over. Her calculator tape adding up the deposits shows the bank is in balance, but I don't see deposit slips. Me, where are the deposit slips? Sally, I haven't gotten them yet. Me, trying to comprehend her logic. Then how do you have the deposit amounts added on this tape? Sally, I got the amounts from the report. Me, you, my brain trying not to implode at this point. You can't add up amounts to see if the bank has too much, or too little money in it, without knowing what was actually taken to the bank. The amounts on the report don't always equal what was taken to the bank. I log into the bank account, and discover just that. The report says they took $500 to the bank, but their deposit says $528. They were indeed $28 over-deposited. I then lecture her, for the second time in a few months, on the correct way to account for the deposits at the bank, that we are only to use the dollar amounts on the bank's deposit receipt. The first time was her getting the deposit amount from what was written on the deposit slip instead of what the bank gave us credit for on their printed receipt. The bank had shorted us $500, and we never knew until her deposits didn't work out when reconciling the bank statement at the end of the month. We were missing $500 for 4 weeks. It's a miracle we didn't overdraw the account. Another task that we do several days a week is checking the CFPB website. This is a government website that uses federal regulations to monitor financial institutions. It's like the Better Business Bureau, but more official. Customers can make complaints through them, prompting an investigation to make sure we're following the federal guidelines. We have 2 weeks to respond to a complaint before it is past due. On February the 29th, Greg just happens to be looking at an email inbox that he never checks, cause after all, we're checking the CFPB website, so he doesn't have to look there, right? There is a complaint in 2 of the portals that have been in there since January the 22nd. He immediately marches out and tells Sally about them. Greg, aren't you checking the CFPB sites? Sally, yeah, I am. Really? Then how come you didn't print this complaint off to give to Greg in the last 6 weeks? She came back from lunch to a second warning, write-up given by me for negligence. On March the 5th, Tuesday, we are working on reconciling the bank statements so we can close the month of February. Sally brings me a Jan bank statement for an office. Sally, this never cleared in February. I look at the bank statement. It's an electronic deposit of $254 on January the 31st. I remember this. She had asked me at the beginning of February why this deposit wasn't recorded on the office's report. I explained that since it didn't show up in the bank account until the last day of Jan, they might not have known about it before the end of the month and so recorded it on the 1st of February. We will wait until the first report of February. If it's still not recorded, then we'll bring that to the office's attention, and here she is, clearly telling me she hadn't brought it to anyone's attention all month long. Me, staring at the bank statement as I try to prevent my autistic brain from exploding at her, while also trying to prevent a spontaneous stroke. You didn't keep track of this all month. Sally, well, I didn't know if it was treated differently, cause it was OTBP, one-time bill pay, which is the electronic deposit. Oh, what a shocker. She once again didn't know how to do something. Me, but we talked about this. If it wasn't on the 1st of the month, we needed to address it. Sally, okay, well, now I know that we treat this the same as other deposits. Goes nonchalantly back to her desk like it was no big deal, like she hadn't just revealed she had once again disobeyed my detailed instructions. Me, seeing her flagrant disregard for the seriousness of the situation, and wondering just how on earth she could once again think that not doing her job would have no consequences. This is exactly what Greg talks about over and over, about how we can't leave errors like this to sit for weeks and weeks, that these need to be dealt with as they happen. Sally, still as easygoing as if she had simply used the wrong color highlighter. Okay, I'll make note of that. Now, I am getting really pissed off. She keeps saying, oh, now I know that OTBP is treated the same as everything else. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you didn't know it's treated the same. I specifically told you to take care of it if it didn't appear on the 1st of February. It didn't matter what kind of deposit it was. I said to tell me if it wasn't on the 1st of February. Now, this was right before she leaves at 3:30, so by the time I'm finished with my text conversation with Greg, 'cause he isn't there that afternoon, she has already left. But I'm telling Greg that I have once again caught her being negligent, and she's already had two written warnings about this. Which means our next step is letting her go. Not to mention, her carelessness is still continuing. He said that he supports my decision to let her go. By the way, the final decision happened an hour after she left. If I had known before she left that we were indeed going to fire her, I would have done it before she left so she didn't have to come all the way to work in the morning just to leave again. So, on March the 6th, Wednesday, I arrive early to work so I can be prepared. I am standing at my desk, watching her come in. This is unusual. So she frowns as she approaches me. Sally, we need to talk. Sally still frowns at me, handing her the typed up notice. We are going to read this together. When reconciling the month of Jan, around February the 5th, it was brought to my attention that we had a deposit that hadn't been reconciled. I gave you instructions to wait a report to see if it works out. If not, you would need to bring it to mine and the office's attention for further instructions. This wasn't done. It wasn't until March the 5th that you brought this to my attention again. You have been told many times the importance of reconciling the financials of the office. You have been warned several times of negligence. This is another example of negligence with respect to your job. All you had to do was follow my instructions. It is for this reason that it is now time to terminate your employment. Sally, when did you tell me to do this? Me, thinking, I kinda just told you when I told you do that. But, okay, when you showed me the Jan bank statement. Sally, yesterday. Me, you showed me the Jan bank statement a month ago when you were reconciling Jan. I told you to wait for the 1st of February and then. Sally, you did no such thing. Me, yes, I did. Sally, when does Greg get here? Me, around 9, like usual. Sally, I'm calling him, 'cause this is ridiculous. You've had it out for me, from the very beginning. Me, no, I haven't. Sally, yeah, you have. Just like the other two. Sets her bags at the front door, goes outside, and calls Greg. How could I have had it out for you from the very beginning, when we didn't have problems for the first year and a half you worked here? If I'd had it out for you from the beginning, you wouldn't have had a job the past 6 months. Need I remind you what Greg told you about the timesheet thing being something we fire someone for on the spot? But that Molly had gone to bat for you and gave you a second chance. Why would I have done that if I had wanted you gone from the start? Just like the other two. She's talking about Irene, who had left in February 2023, and another employee, who we'll call Phil. Phil had been fired by Greg, by the way, for continuing to watch movies on his phone at his desk despite being told multiple times by Greg to not do that. And Irene, she wasn't fired. She gave her 2 weeks notice, and we then discovered when going through the work she's been doing as we started taking over her tasks that she didn't just not do jobs. She would actually forge the work so she wouldn't have to work. A bank imbalance of $2.65. Well, I'll just add it to the imbalance that's been building up for who knows how many months, and just label it as an over deposit from the end of the month. That way, I don't have to look into why the bank isn't balancing. But no, I had it out for them. Apparently. Does she really think that calling Greg was gonna reverse my firing her? Does she really think I would do something as drastic as writing her up, or firing her without discussing it with my supervisor first? Did she really think I would do this behind his back? Apparently, she did, 'cause Greg confirmed that Sally tried telling him about all the stuff I've been doing to her as if he didn't know. She hung up on him when he explained that he's been told everything as it happens and he supports this decision. Sally, storming back into the office and towards her desk. I'm not signing anything. Me, okay. Sally begins packing up her desk. I had known she kept a lot of personal items at the office, so I had gotten a big box or 2 out and placed them nearby for her to use to pack up her desk. Me, we can give you a box if you need it. Sally, I don't need sh*** from you guys. Me, the only thing we'll need is your office key. Sally, you'll get it when you get it. I'm packing my desk. Me, okay. I go back to work, keeping an eye on her as she packs to make sure she doesn't take anything she's not supposed to or damage any company property. Sally at some point decides to use the boxes she didn't want from us to pack up her many items. She takes both boxes to the front door, where her bags are, and sets them down to put the last of her things in. She picks up one box to take outside. Sally, you are the worst manager ever. Goes out the door. Me, shrug. Sally, comes back in for the final box. Seriously, you're the most evil person I've ever met. Leaves. Really? I rank worse than the guy that beat you up. I'm worse than him. I continued watching her to see if she's going to come back to give up her office key. As she packed up her car, another employee had arrived. We'll call him Randy. He had run into her on the way in and asks me if Sally quit. I explained, no, she was let go. I then see that Sally has gotten behind the wheel of her car without coming back to give us the office key. Me, well, I guess we'll just change the locks. Randy then takes it upon himself to go out to her car. He phrased it very gently by saying he wanted to spare her having to come back in to turn the key in. Sally, I guess Molly didn't have the balls to do it herself, hands the key over, and then she was gone. Despite having to do the entire corporate office's work all by myself, and falling steadily behind little by little, I have never been more happy. I had forgotten how much I loved my job, and how much I couldn't wait to get to work. I haven't been this stress-free in 6 months, and it feels fantastic, and the great part is, I'm not really falling as far behind as I expected to without her. Having to do people's jobs by myself is only affecting me a little. Really goes to show you how bad she was for the company, and for my job when she disrupted everything that much. For example, me and her would get through maybe 5 to 6 offices reports between us in a single day, when playing catch-up after closing the previous month. One day, I caught up on 10 offices reports in a single day, by myself. Oh, did I mention she smoked marijuana most days? On her way to work or while on her lunch break? We could never actually prove it. But, come on, you don't smell that strongly of marijuana, on only select days if you aren't smoking it recently. If it was leftover from the smell of your house or car, you would smell like that every day. But it was only some days she would come into work or back from lunch smelling like that. Obviously, smoking on the job. So very glad to be rid of her and her awful skunk smell. Although, I do wish her well on a new job search. I don't wish ill on anyone, ever, but I am just glad she's no longer my problem to deal with. Added 2 months after she was fired. By the way, I am actually gaining on my work. I'm not only not behind on my work, I'm actually getting it done soon enough to work on extra stuff. Also, out of the blue, we've started getting about 3 to 4 sales and scam calls every day since Sally left, for things like better Medicare benefits, better retirement benefits, and even one time recently, where Walgreens was calling to ask if I still had diabetes. I'm convinced Sally signed us up for calls as retaliation. I hope they die down soon, especially as they are starting to get rude. Our response to every one of these is, sorry, this is a business. This one guy responded to me with, this is my job. I said, I understand this is your job, but this is a business. I am not allowed to take personal calls. He said, why? I said very slowly and firmly, because I'm working. He started to say, can you explain to me why? I hung up. Jerk.